Kooleen is one of the most popular art influencers right now, so let's see if we can figure out how to recreate her awesome art. Now, in order to draw like Kooleen, we need to understand how her brain works. So, in fact, I asked her what we should study.
Listen, drawing hot people is the best option. That's why I don't draw ugly people.
The best place to find good-looking people and good-looking references is on Pinterest. So even if you look up Kooleen, all her drawings are good-looking people because studying off of good proportions makes your art a lot better. Alrighty, so the very first thing I'm gonna do is start breaking down how her art is made, or at least how I think her art is made. Since Kooleen said to only draw hot people, I'm just gonna take one of her drawings and then throw that into my canvas like this. I'm just gonna make a kind of crappy sketch of him first. Now, what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to look at how she paints, and it looks like she just uses a brown brush and a square brush. And yeah, that's it. That looks like it. I'm going to color pick the base skin tone, and I'm just going to go and fill that in. And I'm not really worried about my sketch being super messy because she doesn't use... If you look at a lot of Kooleen's drawings, they're really messy. Why is there a helicopter? Helicopter and a plane. Alrighty, so after you have that, I'm just gonna lower my sketch layer and I'm gonna make it a lot less opacity. And then after that, you're basically... Now once you're at this part, I really like to start with the skin, so what you're going to want to do is look at your reference and then just take your lasso tool and start filling in all of the shadows that you see. Don't worry about it being super messy, just try to keep it clean and don't start blending in or doing anything like that. You're just trying to get the base shadows down. Coffee is making my hand shake a little bit. That's always fun. Also looks like Kooleen really likes to use a lot of really cool tones, so I'm going to do that every time I'm going to my shading. As you can see, like it kind of goes from this warmer tone, and then this is more purpley. And she also likes to add a warmer tone between the transition of the lights and the darks. Okay, so another thing that I see Kooleen do a lot, or at least I think this is what she does, so I'm going to do it, is she gets her airbrush tool a lot, and then she'll kind of just go in and then brush in the shadows. So let's say, as an example, with the nose here, she will brush in the shadow like this, so that you get the depth for the nose, but she doesn't keep it like this or else it will look too soft. So what it looks like she does is she actually goes back in with, let's say, the basic skin tone with just a round brush, and she looks like she just kind of goes back in and kind of cuts into it, giving it that sharper, it gives it a much sharper look. Alrighty, now it's time to do her the eyes of her character, which are kind of like one of her signature things apart from the lips. So I'm just going to select my basic shadows again, and I'm just going to go back in using her square brush because this seems to be also like her signature brush a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to use this to start coloring in the eyelids. Alrighty, so now I'm going to go ahead and just start adding in the highlights now that I think that the shadows look mid. So now if you look, her highlights are really sharp and they're really strong. So I'm going to try to keep that as an element in the drawing. And then once again, I think she's doing the cut-in pattern thing that I was talking about earlier, where you kind of take your base color like this highlight, and then you kind of go back and you cut it up and you slice it so it gets that sharper look to it. And it looks more like that AI, like literally like AI art or manhwa styles. Now moving on to the eyes, make sure that you're not using a perfect black color. Try to use a little bit of a darker red or something like that. And try to make it really clean as possible. And Kooleen likes to make her eyes really sharp, and they're more painterly than normal. And they also have a lot of eyelashes. So make sure that you're including that if you're trying to copy your style. Now, moving on to the lips, this is really important for Kooleen style, so make sure that you're trying to make them juicy by using either an airbrush or a round brush. And even when shading them, you're going to want to just use that airbrush or a round brush and then just really roughly and slowly brush in the darker and more saturated tones. Alrighty, it's nighttime here now, but if you want to go ahead and draw the hair, you're going to want to do the exact same thing that you did while drawing the skin, but instead you're just going to want to use a round brush instead of using the lasso tool. And then for the highlights, you're just going to want to block it in, and then you're going to use the smudge tool, and you're just going to want to smudge that back and forth, okay? we're back. So now I'm going to do one of the most important parts of this entire thing. It's like I said before, she doesn't seem to use line art that much. So what she does instead is she goes and uses a square brush, and then, or at least this is what I think, once again. And she usually goes and uses the square brush, and she gets a really saturated tone like red and go dark like that. And then she just goes over it kind of like line art, but she just defines the more defined areas. Alrighty, now moving on to like what she does with her background and stuff. For the background, it looks pretty simple. It's just kind of black, and then she uses a lighter tone, this lighter blue, to make the character pop more. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make a copy of all of my layers here, like so. Bam, and then duplicate that. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flatten it. So now I have one image, okay? So then from here, what I'm going to do is she seems to blur the background here, as you can see, like here and there. So I want to do that on my character here, her actual character, not the background, sorry. And then that should give him a little bit more pop and bring your eye closer to his face, actually. Don't do too much. Just like that. She also does it on the edges of her hair like this too. So we're gonna add that in as well. And then you might have to go back in there and blend it, because sometimes, or what you can do is feather it a little bit so that it doesn't look super crazy. My iPad's gonna die here. It's chill. And you're just gonna blur it a little bit, okay? And bam, look at like how much really makes you want to look at his face a lot more, which is a really cool feature. And then it also just looks like for the actual lighting layer, she just uses an overlay layer, or soft light, whatever. And for me, it looks like she's using more of a red tone, something more orangey, and then kind of putting that in here. And that kind of is what's given that warmish pop to the background. And then it also looks like she does another thing for like the color here. So it kind of has that vibrating type color, chromatic abbreviation. And that will give it that weird kind of color. Alrighty, so I'm going to keep going on rendering this. The only thing I added during this rendering process was darkening some of the shadows and then using Liquify to fix some of the proportions. I think he turned out pretty cool, if you ask me. Alrighty, and that's how you almost draw like Kooleen. So if you guys want to see more content like that, and since this is my first video in like 9 months, just like and subscribe, and I'll make more. Later. I'm 16, you know, I'm sleep depriving myself for you guys. You know, that's why I need the coffee. It's your fault. It's all your fault.